Okay, so we have 2 hours this morning and quite a lot of material to get through. We'll start with some things with which you're quite familiar already. Information flow to the Prime Minister. So I'll ask you to start with the mechanics of information flow. In stage 1 of the Commission's proceedings, you told us that you would receive intelligence in writing, daily or weekly, but that the primary way of informing you, and by the NSIA and the intelligence community, if they really wanted you to know something, would be by briefing you orally. We understand that since then there have been some changes to the system, so can you explain how you now receive intelligence, what the changes have been, and any benefits or drawbacks?
Through the first years that I was Prime Minister, I received, as you say, daily or weekly summaries or snippets prepared for the Prime Minister and the office. And when things were put in front of me, I would read them. But as you say, most of the time, the more serious information would be briefed in person with the National Security Advisor at that point. Through the pandemic, things changed through the work that we've done significantly through both commissions, but also through complex times. We've settled on a new model where about once a week, usually on Monday mornings, I receive a package of secure information with a national security officer in the room with me to oversee and handle the documents, where I go through both summaries and in some cases a certain amount of more detailed raw material or at least primary analysis. Takes me about 45 minutes to an hour on given days, and that's sort of the regular baseline. Some of it is incredibly highly classified, some of it is slightly more routine. But on top of that, usually at least once a week, I end up sitting down in a secure room with advisors and officials to talk through some of the more germane or difficult or contentious or urgent intelligence that is being worked on or received at any given moment.
Okay. And how's the new system working for you? So the weekly reading period plus the briefings? It
is working well. The consuming of information in that weekly briefing is really just that. I will sometimes ask for follow-up questions on this issue or that issue, or verify that, okay, this seems very serious. Reassure me that everyone is taking this very seriously and acting on it, and the client relations officer, or CRO, will do that. But if there are specific questions I have for the client relations officer, usually they will be answered to me in the next meeting I have with the NSIA. Or sometimes there'll be an addendum or a specific document that will be handed to me the following week in answer to the questions I have. In general, I tend to prefer to be able to challenge and ask questions right away of the NSIA, of people in positions of authority or power, to be able to, or influence over the actual collection and operations, to be able to ask them for more details than sometimes comes out. So I tend to prefer those in-person briefings, but having that baseline of a weekly session with a vast range of information is very useful.
Okay. Speaking more substantively now in terms of what intelligence is brought to your attention specifically, There's been a lot of discussion in the Commission's proceedings, you may know, about whether or not certain intelligence has reached you, certain information, and whether it should have. And there's also been a lot of discussion about the vast universe of intelligence and information that's out there. One figure we've heard is 70,000 products produced by or published by the Canadian intelligence community per year. So assuming you're not going to read the 70,000, and though not all 70,000 will come into your attention, what is it that you expect to see? What is it that you need to see as Prime Minister?
I need to see information that is germane to my role as Prime Minister. And that means things that are directly impacting or threatening Canadians, things that are linked to particular policy decisions we need to make as a government, whether in an approach to a particular issue or region of the world or indeed country, or whether it's looking at improvements that need to be made in our national security legislation or agencies, things where there are perhaps gaps highlighted or tools that would be necessary to act on to combat new threats around disinformation or misinformation that certainly nobody was thinking of 20 years ago to the same degree, or information that's particularly germane if I'm going to a G7 or a NATO meeting or a G20 where I will be interacting with various leaders. Are there things that I need to know about them that are relevant for our interactions or our potential interactions? I guess in general, I mean, I have to trust, and I do, the intelligence officials, and more specifically, my national security and intelligence advisor, to make determinations on what it is that I need to see as a summary, what I need to see as a full analysis, or what I might even need to see in raw intelligence. And over the years of working with NSIAs, I would say that they have gotten very good at knowing what it is that I already know about, what it is that I'm particularly interested in and I'm going to ask more questions about, and what it is that I really should see the raw intel and an evaluation of. The source it's a single source but reliable, or a single source and somewhat unreliable, but the information is so explosive that you should have it in your brain. That sort of frame is very much why I have a national intelligence and security and intelligence advisor, to be able to know, okay, the PM already knows about, the point of this document. We don't need to give him the full document. I can simply apprise it on him, and he can spend his time digging into these other more relevant or newer pieces of information that will complete his understanding of the threats and realities faced by Canada and Canadians.
Okay, so the primary responsibility then for making sure that you do have what you need to know, and maybe don't have what you don't need to know, or that you don't spend your time on the wrong things, that falls to the NSIA, as you've said.
I would say the primary repository of those decisions is the NSIA, but there are a number of others who will flag that. Sometimes it's my foreign policy and defense advisors, Patrick Travers, or others in my office who will see a larger range of information than I do because they have a specific task on that one area, whereas I'm covering all policy areas for this country. They will dig in and say, okay, the PM really should see this because it's particularly relevant for these reasons that are perhaps not, perhaps more political reasons that the NSIA, looking at it from an official lens, wouldn't have. In some cases, the clerk of the Privy Council will flag things for me, or the director of CSIS in meetings with him, he will say, no, you really should follow up on this or that. But in general, the filter through which everything goes is the NSIA, with whom I need to have a very close relationship, with whom I do, and a bond of not just trust in the judgment that she puts forward on what I should see or what I shouldn't see, but she needs to have a pretty good idea of the things I know about, the things I need to know more about, and the things that are going to be of particular interest or importance to me.
Okay, that's fair. So it's not just the NSIA.
No, but it's primarily the NSIA, as you said.
Fair enough. But so it's a close two-way working relationship then.
Very, very.
And we've also heard that the part of the NSIA's role is to sort of play a convening role within the national security community. So it's a significant role. And there have been suggestions made, for instance, in the NCERA report, that the role should be formalized in a legal instrument. We've also heard talk in these commission's proceedings from the clerk, I believe, who suggested the idea of a mandate letter, perhaps. What are your thoughts on that?
Over the course of the years that I've been Prime Minister, we've had a number of different changes to the National Security Advisor role. One of the changes I made reasonably early on was actually adding National Security and Intelligence Advisor, because it wasn't just about security. Intelligence was becoming more and more important in our approach. But from one NSIA to the next, there were significant changes in the threat environment around us, in the composition of the senior ranks of the public service and the different roles. When Ian Shugart was my clerk, he came at that role with such a deep and expert understanding of international issues, of intelligence issues, that he played a role not just as a clerk, but as a significant national intelligence and security advisor to me, just as through his capabilities and personality, and therefore the actual NSIA I had at that point had a slightly different role than in other times where the clerk wasn't as much of a national security focused individual and had other qualities, and the National Security Advisor was really the person who was centered around that for me. So those natural variations, and, for example, the fact that right now my National Security and Intelligence Advisor is also Deputy Clerk of the Privy Council, which I think is very useful in this case, isn't necessarily automatically something every future Prime Minister would want. Therefore, the idea of bounding in very prescriptive legislation, the role of a national security and intelligence advisor, I think would be probably less flexible than the role actually requires, because the most important part of the role is that the individual be empowered and connected to the Prime Minister in the right way, but also able to command the town or the intelligence agency's respect and be able to convene.